programme is brought to you by UCL, London's global university.
To round this up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask our panellists to just give us a sort of summary comment with regards to the question that we've been proposed at the end here, which is delivering Olympic gold clinical academic drivers. So I think what we're really looking here is that the triumvirate of the Olympics and therefore sports in the broadest sense, health and healthcare and health delivery and academia. And how might it all work for the greater good? Now, the first time I went to see Clive, and we were trying to see if we could accommodate the British Olympic Science and Research Unit here at UCL, Clive at the end there, we sat down in a room in the basement of a building, and I just asked him straight, I said, well, what do you think UCLH could do for you? What do you want out of this? And he said, it's quite simple, we just want more gold medals. So there we are, simple metric. Clive, could you just expand on that?
Just quickly, I just when we first met, I was very excited when I obviously knew the reputation of both the organisations down here. To me, it was very straightforward. Number one, research to really what we can deliver from the BOA's point of view is not theory. People who really do need help on research projects across a whole range of sports. Hopefully, you'll get some from my presentation. You'll see just some of the stuff I've been touching on in a very basic way, but a very practical way. So the research side is absolutely huge, and to work for all our sports to start to really apply real issues and opportunities we've got would be great. Then the second thing was, I think I mentioned it, you know, it drives me nuts when you're out there and you're speaking to certain athletes and they've say got an injury, and I say, where are you going? And they're going off to America, they're going off to Germany, and they're rolling off these names. And I said, well, why are you going there? And they said, well, so-and-so went there. There's no logical reason why they go to these parts of the world to get knee surgery and shoulder operations. And it just seemed to me, you know, I just think we have the expertise in this part of the world, especially in London. So if we can start to actually more formalise where this real expertise are in terms of the actual, and these are people who are injured. So that's the second thing. And lastly, I mentioned it, it drives me absolutely crazy as a coach, the amount of players that are injured through where they shouldn't be injured. And as a coach, the lack of knowledge that you've really got, if you're honest, about, and most injuries tend to happen in training because you're doing the wrong things with players, and there's just total gap between what we should be doing as a professional coach. And I think, and maybe one of the questions will come, to the England football team, to me, I'm a passionate football fan, and I said I'd take my band off after England lost, and I just can't take it off, I'm so mad, so it's still on my wrist. But watching someone like Lampard, he just didn't seem to be the same player. I just think he was physically and mentally drained. So he's arrived at the biggest tournament of his life where he should be absolutely firing on all cylinders. Now that's not happened. And you can't just sit back and it's one of those things we play long seasons. Every player plays long seasons. There's no real, I don't think, scientific process in place to absolutely guarantee that those top players were arriving on that day, they're absolutely, you know, eyes out and all that stuff. It just didn't happen. And I just don't think we're anywhere near working enough with your side of the business. So that's why I was quite excited, Monty, about, or more than quite excited about the potential of this project if we can really get it off the ground.
Okay, thank you. Now, Mike Grocott, from the point of view of us actually delivering something, the playing in the snow, as some people might see, it all looks a lot of fun. But in reality, those dramatic figures that you show us, anything on the horizon that might be able to help the aspiration of us winning more gold medals, but also make a difference to our patients?
So from the sports and exercise perspective, I guess the obvious question is whether some of the adaptations that you have at altitude are beneficial at sea level, and it's a well-trodden path. And I hopefully won't upset too many people in the room, but there's a degree of scepticism as to whether the altitude training for sea level performance works, and certainly why it works. So what particular characteristics of a training profile, an individual that would make them benefit from that profile. And whilst that's not an area where we've currently done work, clearly all the techniques and the group we put together on Everest, I think would love to get their teeth into that problem. If you were to speculate about what might deliver first from what you're developing, have a punt. We've moved towards, and more with an eye on the clinical environment, we've moved towards doing some small-scale interventional studies. In fact, Dan is off in about a couple of weeks' time to the Alps. looking at particular mechanisms, I mean, in fact, related to the nitric oxide system, but starting to use some interventions that may serve to make those that adapt less well have the pattern of adaptation that you see in those that adapt better.
Okay. Yeah, Hugh, the genes, what do you think we're going to have from the genetic perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Monty. I think the answer is going to be, the quick return is going to be injuries. And it's interesting to see Clive making that point, because this isn't about the super selection. When we first published those first Genes for Fitness, we were approached by Premier Division clubs saying, how are we going to select these, the footballers of the future? And I said, well, invest in putting in football pitches and watch the kids play, because that's how you're going to select the best ones. And if you could pick them genetically, the thing that would stop them would be if they don't discover sort of boyfriends, girlfriends, cigarettes and beer and pork pies, will be the fact they get injured. And if we could track how that happens, then we'd know how to stop it happening. We know who is at risk, whether we could just modulate the training. And we can give you some examples, actually, and I don't want to overplay the genetics on that. I think it will help us identify. But if you look at military training, for instance, when we were first working with recruits, about 37% being back squatted or injured out. Simple answer, stop them training in army boots and move them to trainers. Injury rate drops to 6%. So it's going to be a combination of playing the genes with the changes in the way we train, and I think that'll be the answer.
Now, I'm aware, I've seen some email traffic. I'm aware of the fact that there's already been some very practical developments from a group visiting some of the Olympic teams training. Do you want to just share a hint of that with us?
Yeah, well, I mean, Monty's alluding to the fact that Monty was actually there. We went out to Bisham, and I should say that the UCL approach to this, I hope, is going to be rather different from that which other groups might have taken, because we're going out saying, what is it that you want from us? What are your problems? As opposed to, we're clever and we've got this great idea about a gene or something else. So Mike and Ken and others took us out to Bisham, and the first day, a really tough day actually. They wanted us to look at a particular group with injuries, and that was women canoeists bottoms. And Monty had a sort of Homer Simpson, Petty Mal sort of moment. And when we finally got him to stop looking, what we were realising was it turns out to be a major problem, and it apparently impedes significantly on performance, because if you've got a seat that swings, you can't put the power into the paddle, and if you've got the seat that's fixed, then all that power does is grind your bottom against the seat, and these people are all competing with dreadful sacral ulcers. And you can't tell me that's good for performance, and there is no solution to it. So the simple thing they said to us, well, there's one thing. Go away and tell us how we're going to solve that. So Ken's picked it up, actually, and is now working with a materials technologist here, Professor of Material Technology, developing a new material which they think will create traction whilst dissipating energy and heat, protect the skin, and hopefully mean that these canoeists do no longer are paddling in pain. So, and that was an easy one. We've got that expertise.
With potential enormous health benefits if it works for pressure sores.
If it works for that, then it'll be patients and diabetic foot ulcers and a whole lot of other things.
Paul, if you could just tell us a little bit about your role, and then if you could give us your perspective of what you've heard today and where you think this could go in the future.
Well, first of all, thank you very much first for the opportunity. I'm Chief Medical Officer of UK Athletics. And I guess, I don't know where to start. It's been an amazing morning, and I've learned a lot from each and every speaker. Perhaps the most important thing is that it's a huge task laying ahead of us, and it's not stopping at the London 2012 Olympic Games. I think one of the greatest challenges of this group and of us is how do we maintain what we gain at the moment. And I'm happy to say that within UK Athletics we have a very specific strategic objective, how to improve and how to maintain that and how to develop further beyond 2012. And perhaps one of the biggest things to achieve is exactly what Clive said, is coach education. How do we improve the way that we deal with our youngsters to, in terms of injury risk and in terms of pathology carrying through their life into the championship days laying ahead. And that's one of the challenges in UK Athletics.
Okay, thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, I'm Mike Loosemore. I'm a consultant in sports and exercise medicine, and I work for the English Institute of Sport. And the English Institute of Sport is delighted to be involved in this project at UCL, which I think is going to be tremendous, not just now for 2012, but in the future, and is incredibly important not just for sport, but also for exercise and the general well-being of the population into the future. The English Institute of Sport is a large organisation. Interestingly, at the Beijing Olympics, the English Institute of Sport looked after all the gold medalists and all the silver medalists at the Beijing Olympics. We deliver 4,000 hours of sports and exercise medicine to elite athletes every week, 4,000 hours a week, and we have 250 employees spread throughout the UK. This partnership with UCL is unique in that we are working within a teaching hospital and a scientific environment with what I'm told repeatedly is one of the best universities in the world. And my experience so far is that is the case. I've been blown away by the abilities of the scientists we've worked with. Hugh's been superb, you've been extremely helpful. But it's also about working with the clinicians at the teaching hospital. So unlike all our other sites, which are based at training areas, at training camps, this is very much a medical environment. And people like Petrie de Villiers has been tremendous help in imaging, and obviously Faris as well. Not with imaging, but with actually cutting people apart and putting them back together again. And we hope to build up those relations with all other sorts of specialities within the hospital, so that we get a huge experience within a top hospital of dealing with elite athletes, whether it's gut problems, whether it's neurological problems, whether it's skin problems, and so that people can come here from all across the country to get these issues dealt with. And I think this is an extremely powerful and important collaboration.
If I just come back on it from our perspective, from the clinician side of it, some of our patients who walk past one of our buildings now and see the 5 rings there, and they see the English Institute of Sport. I was talking to David Fish, who from the UCL partners perspective about this in the break, is just that badging gives a lift to everyone. There's that sort of it's okay to just feel good about the fact that the Olympics is a good thing. And when patients mention that, no matter what they're up against, they also seem to get some benefit from just seeing that badging. So it's great to have you here, Marco, etc., everyone else as well. So Ellie, in the thick of things, what about it from your perspective?
I help run the MSc programme in Sports Medicine, Exercise and Health. And so I think I've probably put my education hat on to answer this question. If we want to deliver everything we've talked about this morning, both in terms of the legacy and in the performance excellence, we need more manpower. We need students that are excited to learn and able to leave UCL with that continued motivation. And I think that links in very well with Clive's pyramid, which I was very taken with, in terms of their teachability and their attitude to learning as they go forward. I think the standard of research that's going on at master's level is improving all the time, and we can start to try and contribute to the body of knowledge, but more importantly, if we can develop students that understand the research process, that aren't scared of it, that will leave here and be able to read the literature and think critically and apply what they've learned, as well as hopefully go on and do further research, then I think we'll be going a long way to helping achieve the goals we've talked about this morning.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, Hugh's comment about the distribution of genes, I think, was not correct about this room, because this is an extraordinary mix of people. It's very rare that you actually go into a room, this is the IIDD thing, and sit amongst people who've got gold medals, who've actually won a World Cup, that sort of thing. But Dan is actually a world record holder at the moment. And he's the person on that slide who's got the lowest recorded level of oxygen that's ever been recorded. So Dan, it's your opportunity to now demonstrate your brain still works. Okay.
Apparently still working, yes, thank you. It's an incredible group of people gathered here today, and I think it's an important time to focus on the very much talked about legacy of the Olympics, in particular the legacy for the general public. And I think it's a fantastic opportunity to engage the public. All of us in the room, whether you like it or not, whether you're a sports person or otherwise, will have to face a marathon at some point, and that marathon will come in the form of major surgery. And from work that we do clinically, we know the fitter you are, the more likely you are to survive surgery. So engaging the public in the science behind sports and the benefits that it may have to them is a very, very important goal. And when we've got the focus of the country and the world upon us, we can begin to tackle these things. And I think you've also seen here today that the importance of what we call translational research. What we've learnt on Everest, from adaptation to hypoxia, can be applied directly to our patients on the intensive care unit. And I think these cohorts of elite athletes, people who go to high altitude, and critically ill patients, there's a commonality of mechanisms there which we can begin to explore with the molecular and genetic and cellular techniques that you've heard about today. So two really unique opportunities that we need to think about right now to get moving to fill that sort of black hole that is the Olympic legacy for the general public.
So a closing promise from you, Dan. I know you're heading off with a team in a couple of weeks' time to test a new therapeutic intervention that may change metabolic efficiency. If it does, can you promise to only tell our Olympic team? Is that...
Yeah, I'll keep it top secret.
Thank you very much indeed to our panel. Thank you very much. I'm now going to hand over to Professor Sir John Tooke to close this launch meeting.
It's indeed a privilege to make a few closing remarks before lunch regarding what has been an extremely exciting and stimulating launch. It is my privilege to lead the School of Life and Medical Sciences at UCL, and yes, it is the school with the strongest biomedical research power in the UK, lest anyone was in doubt. But fundamentally, I'm a clinician, and I went into academia because I believe fundamentally that academia can be harnessed for the benefit of health. And that's what this enterprise actually demonstrates. This is an enactment of that principle, and I'm really encouraged to see it having reached this stage. I don't need to emphasise for you the impact that sport and exercise can have on health, be it from bone health to prevention of type 2 diabetes to mental well-being. But of course we all know that it has a major impact on a nation's hopes, aspirations and indeed well-being, positive or negative, as 2003 and as the last week has demonstrated. But of course it's the basic science in which UCL is so traditionally strong that we can bring something special to bear on the sorts of questions that are emerging. And it's fascinating to learn from Mike and Hugh how we're beginning to understand some of the determinants of physiological behaviour during exercise, which will have far-reaching implications not just for sport but for health in a broader sense. But it's tempting to focus on the biomedical, and I would just like to emphasise that of course there is a huge agenda around getting the evidence into practice, the so-called applied health research, and getting populations and people to take up ways of improving their health. And my colleague Ian Jacobs alluded to our Academic Health Science Centre, UCL Partners, which is a partnership between UCL, UCLH and other elite hospitals. And we are taking that part of the agenda, that applied part, as seriously as we are the biomedical part. It's partly ensuring that you have proper health systems, that you have proper policy frameworks, that you have proper stimuli to encourage best practice. It's partly that you can diffuse that new knowledge through education and other means, and I'm absolutely delighted that the Institute is taking that educational piece as seriously as it is the research piece. The academic contribution is both of those things, and it's very important that we use the information and the skills that you're generating to inform the next generation of practitioners, because we're all aware there is a dearth of skill in the sports medicine field around the UK, and that needs to be addressed. It needs to be addressed from medical studenthood onwards. So I'm very pleased to see that. The final barrier to uptake of evidence, however, is the individual. The individual, be it the elite athlete or, for most of us, the individual member of the populace or the patient in front of you. And I found Clive's comments inspiring and very helpful in a way of thinking about actually how we inform the population and individuals about how to adopt a winning profile. The winning profile for somebody in Camden may actually be about how they can come to terms that they need teachability, they need to be able to adapt their behaviour, they need to exercise more, they need to adapt their diet. Understanding that, and you've given us some clear insights, understanding that will enable us to make tremendous leaps forward. So, in summary, I would just emphasise what my colleagues at UCL have said. UCL, the School of Life and Medical Sciences, is absolutely committed to the success of this exercise. I think we can also draw on the egalitarian tradition of UCL to make sure that those that are less able are able to benefit from this initiative, as well as the fully able. And I expect to see peak performance on the track, in the clinic and in the laboratory. And I'd like to end by thanking Faraz and colleagues for the launch, for inviting me, and invite you to show your appreciation to the panel and the speakers this morning in the traditional way, but no vuvuzelas, please.
Thank you in particular to Lorna, Chow and the team who have worked relentlessly in the background in spite of my inefficiency to make this happen. There are a host of people, some of whom you've heard from today, many of whom are in the background, some of whom have drifted in and out, who've made this possible. I hope it's the beginning of something big and special and that you're all going to play a part in it. For the time being, just like to say thank you all for being here today, and I hope we'll keep you updated with events in future. Thank you very much.
To find out more about UCL, please visit us at itunes.ucl.ac.uk.